kick off this office hours, people may start dropping in eventually, but we are recording this. So if you are watching this on YouTube, then hello, welcome. And so today's office hours is going to be led by Gitpodders. We've got AXON and Simon giving us some demos today, and I'm super looking forward to it.
So, can you see my screen? Okay, cool. So hello everyone. Today I want to share with you about creating an interactive onboarding experience for a Git repository where it makes sense with a simple script inside your Gitpod YAML. Now let's think about a few example scenarios. Let's say we have a project that requires the developers to configure few API keys from different services and to set them up on their systems to be able to finally run the project. Another scenario would be that you have documentation kind of repository, and whoever is willing to contribute has to manually figure out a few things in order to successfully submit a change. And I also recently saw a YouTube video from one of our community members, and there he goes through a process of contributing translations for different languages, and it involved a bunch of manual steps. Nothing difficult, but I was just thinking, what if it was more interactive from the terminal or using the CLI, Now, of course, you can write a detailed step-by-step guide on your README MD about the contribution flow, which works great. However, if you put a little bit of efforts, that same guide on README would be expressed with an even more interactive flow, and that could be even more easy to follow. And a real world example would be the one Pipedream has. So if I show you, in the Pipedream repository, we have the script. It's a pretty simple bash script. And if I show the workspace, as you can see, whenever someone opens up a workspace from the Pipedream repository, they will be introduced with this prompt that asks the user to get the API key and to paste it here, and then it will automatically run a bunch of commands to set that up. And of course, Intune runs once, and this is basically what I'll show today. A pretty brief thing. Now, the purpose of this demo is not to show you how to do it, but to share the idea that it could be a nice thing to have. And obviously, you don't have to do it in Bash. You can do it in pretty much anything else because it's very basic. I'll open up my example repository. So in my Gitpod YAML, as you can see, I have this command that sources the onboard SH script, and in onboard SH script, I have a bunch of examples. So this is such a small script, and if you play around with Bash for a few minutes, you can easily figure this out. And of course, as I said earlier, you can do it with any other programming language or tool you like. But with Bash, you can get it done in a few lines of code, which is really nice. So if I run this script, you'll see that it presents with a bunch of prompts where I can provide my input. And of course, many of you already know this stuff, but I just wanted to show it. So I'll enter my name, and the next one provides a placeholder text that I can edit or put another text if I like. And here's the code that is being executed in this part. So this part is saying to use readline, and I'm providing the initial text as Friday. which you can see is Friday is already included. I can delete this text and enter something else. And in Bash, you can also do select menus. So here's the select menu, and I can select from dog or cat. I'll select cat. So as you see, it's a pretty simple way to really get it done. I basically wrote the script before joining the meeting, so I was kind of late to join, but it only took me 2 minutes to really put this together. So what I wanted to say is it's pretty easy to write such a script, and um, if you have a project that can benefit from such an onboarding flow, so you can express the contributing flow as code instead of putting together a really huge um, readme instructions for someone who is willing to contribute. So it could be a really handy thing if you do so, you invest some time. And there's another tool called Gum, and it's actually pretty cool. You can also use it with Bash to easily create interactive shell scripts with even more fancy colors um, and some of the other utilities it provides. So here are some of the examples, as you can see. And of course, another real world example would be, um, let's say, um, if I run this build utilization, as you see, it's providing me with a interactive prompts. And I was basically sharing the same idea here. And yeah, so, and I also prepared an example with the GAM CLI tool. If I show you, so with GAM, you have this fancy, um, fancy utilities, and it's nicer than Bash. Also, you can use it from Bash. Um, and that's another kind of prompt that it provides. It provides a lot of different kinds of prompts that you can use from your script, and it's written in Golang. So if that's interesting to someone, yeah. So I think that's all I had to show. And again, I just wanted to say that this is something you could use instead of um, writing a really huge onboarding document in some of the cases. And with Gitpod, it just makes even more sense because you get instant development environments, and you definitely don't go through the README or the contributing MD to figure out what are the steps be to successfully submit a change that won't get rejected. So yeah, that's the idea, and I hope it might help someone. If you have any comments to share or any questions, feel free to ask. I'm happy to answer.
Simon, the stage is yours.
Hello there. Right, so I'm going to have a small talk on monitoring. Hopefully my voice is coming through nice and clearly and you can all see my screen. If not, well, please let me know. So this is one of the things that in the self-hosted team we're probably not brilliant at, because most of the focus of the self-hosted team has historically been on the installation side of things. And there's very good reasons for that. You know, we're only a small number of people, and that's where the majority of people have their pain. But the monitoring side of things is a really important aspect for running a self-hosted instance of your own in a long term. Now, Gitpod.io has an awful lot of monitoring things going on. We've got whole playbooks, we've got whole alerts, we've got more graphs than you can shake a stick at. the majority of which for a self-hosted instance are not going to be relevant. And I would also argue that for the majority of, if you're running a single or a small application, you don't really necessarily want to be doing too much monitoring because there's not a lot of value in it. Obviously, if you're running a big business critical instance, then there is more value, but that doesn't mean to say there's nothing you can't get from it. So there is a blog post, well, there's in the docs there is a whole section on monitoring which was written by Arthur. So I think he wrote the majority of the initial stages. I don't know if there's been amendments later on. And this sort of goes down, and none of this necessarily is going to be of much use to you. I suppose the thing, there's not going to be much new things coming out of it. There's going to be lots of interesting things in there, but so it should be fairly standard if you've been doing any DevOps side of things for any period of time. Now, pretty much every component in Gitpod has a Prometheus endpoint or Prometheus metrics attaching in there. Prometheus is just a way of exposing numbers, and those numbers are a snapshot in time, so that you can connect it to a graph, or you can do other things with it, and you can see trends over time, whether it's positive or negative for what you want to be monitoring. But actually, in Prometheus's terms, they're just those are just numbers in a snapshot in time. The important one from our point of view as an owner of a Gitpod instance is what's in WS Manager, which is the component, and that is all about the things that are here. Making sure that your workspaces are running, make sure that they're starting quickly, make sure that there's none that are stopping due to errors. Those are obviously big problems. Now, if you go through this this entire post here, you won't actually, I don't think, get something that necessarily works brilliantly, because there's a few things that we need to do on this. Got the dog. There's a few things that we still need to do on this. One of the things that we have is that actually the WS Manager Prometheus endpoints, that's not actually connected to a service. There's actually a very good reason for that, and that's largely because the workspace team need to. In Gitpod IO, that's actually exposed everything on WS Manager because of the way it's run. So we've got to think about that. So if you are running your own monitoring instance, you have to create a service for the WS WS Manager. Fortunately, I've done all this for you. So I've created a Gitpod monitoring URL, Mr. Simon M's Gitpod-monitoring, and this basically goes through so you can actually get a basic instance of Gitpod monitoring up and running. It uses a Helm chart, and that basically, if you just run that command there, that will then deploy it. It basically deploys a couple of things. So it uses the Prometheus stack. So that by default, I think it does Prometheus, which is where the metrics are stored. It does Grafana, which is so you can view them, and it also got Alert Manager. Now, I haven't created anything in Alert Manager yet. That's a future iteration, but it gives you where we are currently. And also the COTS config has a few things as well that are useful. So this is, hopefully people are sort of familiar with this. This is the COTS dashboard, which is what we use to deploy everything. And we have this section here, which everybody misses, monitoring. Now, if you put in a Prometheus endpoint, actually get a basic monitoring stack. It doesn't go particularly historic. It only goes, I think that's what, 15 minutes, and it's not necessarily brilliant. So for instance, you end up with this here, so workspace failures per second. You're never going to go down to -1 workspace failures. That's just because they don't allow you to control the graph. But when you go and start something, so if I start up this workspace here, why is it building that image? I built all these images so we didn't have to. Shit. I've gone run, built all these images so that we didn't have to. Here we go. What we'll end up seeing is these will start increasing in numbers over time, and then we get an idea of the startup time. Now these are fairly standard and fairly basic. So what you can also do is you can use the Grafana dashboard that comes as part of the Prometheus stack, and this gives you, with Grafana you can go back as much as you want. You can be quite granular in the detail. So we can see, if we look here, that there's been no failures on my workspaces, which is very good. We don't want to see failures. And I've been running, so the yellow line is the pending workspaces, which is the workspaces that are currently being built. And then the green is the workspaces that are currently running. So if we look at the side here, then we've got one that's just started up here because this one here has just started up. And then you can see actually over time that we've got some fairly, so this one here took a bit of time to start. It took 32 seconds. That's because that was the very first one. I had to download all the initial images and whatnot. But actually then the workspaces we've got here, when we've got the images all on the nodes, those are only taking a couple of seconds to start the workspaces. So that is what some of the things that you can do when with the monitoring side of things. Really and truly, what I suppose what would be useful is people to know what we want from monitoring, because I think this is, as I said earlier, I think this is one of those things that certainly in Gitpod and self-hosted, we're only focused primarily on the installation side of things. So this is a shout out to the community to say, what is it we're missing? What else do you want to be looking at with regards to the monitoring side of things? At the moment, this is sort of my repo that I've started just as a sort of a backpack it, let's see how we can get going. But in future this may actually then get brought into the whole Gitpod ecosystem, and we offer this out as a repository that we can do. Clearly there's going to be a requirement for some alerts. That would be a really useful thing. But again, I mean, alerts, it's one of those things, if you are, just one person running a Gitpod instance, or you're a small company running it, then your alerts, if you get alerts in the middle of the night when you're asleep and really you're the only person using it, you're not going to be too bothered about those alerts. If you are, massive bank PLC and you're a 24-hour operation, you do care about alerts overnight. So there's a lot of different things that we have to think about if we're offering this as a library. Maybe we could offer downtime or what have you in the alerts. And there's obviously also things like where those alerts go to, because you could ping to your phone, if you go to PagerDuty, it could just send you an email to say something's broken. So there's lots of different ways that we can think about that. Does anybody have any questions with regards to monitoring and what we can look at?
Fine for me. Yeah, the question was basically the Grafana instance that you're, I think, still showing. My question was, is that part of the local install? Is that related to COTS? Like, do I get that by default?
So this one here, this Grafana dashboard we're seeing here, this is part of my repository, the one that I've created. The COTS dashboard one here, you get this by default if you connect it up to a Prometheus instance. If you don't connect it up to a Prometheus instance, you just see the "would you like to connect this up to a Prometheus instance" question. But it's this one here. This is actually part of the monitoring repository.
Gotcha. My additional question, I suppose, is kind of related or a follow-on then, which is, how are you handling sort of integrating with existing vendors? Like, how does that work with, if you've already got an existing monitoring stack, something that's hosted? What's the kind of integration point there?
Really and truly, from a purpose of my stack, I really thought about that. My stack was just, I wanted to go through Arthur's post and see if I could make sense of it, because I knew at some point somebody would ask me questions on it, and that's effectively why I've done this. And I did it as a Helm library that I published in case anybody else found it useful. It's probably just going to be for me, and that's fine. If somebody has their own monitoring stack, and if they've got their own Prometheus stuff, then in reality what they have to do is follow the published documents that we've got, this monitoring Gitpod, and effectively they've got to do the same work that I've done in the repository. The purpose of the repository that I created is, here is a fully functioning monitoring stack, fully functioning with an asterisk on it, but this is what I've created. If it's useful to you, obviously, if you want to do it, if you want to customize it beyond what's possible within that Helm chart, then it's build your own and go from there.
Gotcha. Yeah. Certainly having some sort of out of the box. It's nice because you have the out of the box stuff in COTS, and then you have the additional stuff that you're kind of sharing here. And then, if you want to, you can go full custom and stuff if you want.
I don't think that this will. I mean, I'm saying this. This is not even an official Gitpod thing. This is just something that I had to play with, just because I wanted to see how easy it was. But my feeling is that this will never be part of the standard installation for as you said, Lou, the reasons there's so many different use cases and requirements out there, that having this as a standard, this is installed as part of your Gitpod, will probably be more problematic than it would be by not doing it. But this is a sort of a standalone. You can just run this and it will work as a standalone instance. Does anybody else have any other questions for me? Commands in what respect, sorry?
Sorry, is this related to self-hosted, or is this just Gitpod in general?
Is this related to Simon's demo?
Right, so this is not part of this is not in response to my demo then, is it? We can sort of talk about that if there's time towards the end. I was more hoping to focus on the demo, and if there's any questions regarding that first.
Hey Brian, you can get an answer for this later after the demo. So if you have any questions regarding Simon's demo, you can ask them. Or if anyone else has any questions regarding the demos that Simon showcased, you can ask.
Is there no other questions? Can you hear me better? Or am I still breaking up?
It's still a bit broken up.
Oh, this is terrible. I'm so sorry. Does anyone have any more questions for Simon? I might just type this actually, because I don't want to sound super robotic.
Simon, so your
The
demo
demo's
is
done.
done,
Hopefully
right?
it was all enjoyable.
Yeah. I got no idea about self-hosting, so I only understood a few bits of it, if I'm being honest. Yeah, so anyone who's interested in might make more
Yeah,
sense.
we're trying to reduce the gap between SaaS and self-hosted to make it so that it's people are less scared to try it out. One thing we're doing, I mean, this is entirely internal to Gitpod at the moment. But one thing we've has just been released today is self-hosted demos inside our CI/CD pipeline. So you can run a K3S instance straight from the off.
Sounds cool. Yeah, one day I'll surely try self-hosting myself. Something that's been in my to-dos, but never really made it through. Yeah, so I guess this is pretty much it for today's office hours.